Reverse by Black K. Cat. Chapter 68. Sagacious. Kisama's getting kind of tired of Konoha. He's specifically getting kind of tired of Danzo, who's hovering and glowering and issuing orders to his subordinates in dark, hushed tones Kisame can't quite make out. As far as Kisame's been able to tell, he wants to get back the children the tiger-masked Anbu stole, but he can't find them, and it's putting him in a busy mood. The last time Kisame had to deal with a busy person who thought they were his boss for an extended period of time, it was Fuguki, and Kisame killed him and took his sword. He still hasn't gotten any news about Obito either. Chuckling softly and a little wryly at his own foolishness, Kisame checks their prisoners again, testing the ninja wire their hands are tied with and making sure they're actually unconscious and not just faking it. Their chakra levels are a little low, but they'll survive, and even if they're just Tokujo, Kisame isn't about to take chances. He knows desperation when he sees it, and these two were verging on it. Loyalty, Kisame thinks, is a nice thing to find even in his enemies. Of course, it's slightly offset by Danzo, but the guy with the glasses did risk a lot to try and help his friend, even when he could have tried to get away. And he proposed a date! Even if it was a distraction, or mostly a distraction, Kisame is still flattered. It's not the first thing most people think when they look at him, as experience has long since proved. Danzo's frown is growing deeper, verging on a scowl, as the root member in front of him gives her report, and Kisame decides he should probably chip in. The Tokujo are secure, after all, and he's got little else to do until the rescue attempt happens. "Everything working out?" he asks easily, straightening up and shifting Samahara where it's slung over his back.
Danzo's expression is displeased. Jiraiya is lurking somewhere my agents cannot find him. Beyond that, Orochimaru has escaped from his cell and Sakamoto appears to have gone after him. That's 3 of the strongest shinobi in the village unaccounted for. I do not like this.
Kisame knows about the Sannin and the White Fang. Everyone knows about the Sannin and the White Fang if they've learned anything at all about Konoha as an opponent. It's a village where genius is almost commonplace, and those 4 were among the greatest. Orochimaru won't be a problem, since Kisame almost managed to beat him once, and Orochimaru with his ninjutsu is badly matched against Kisame's abilities. But Jiraiya and Tsunade might be a headache if they get involved. Especially Tsunade. With her strength and perfect chakra control, Kisame would likely be in trouble if he pitted himself against her. In any other situation, a thought like that might be enough to make Kisame hunt her down just to try it, but he sadly doesn't have the time. The messenger crow that the second Tokujo slipped past them were caught before he could leave the forest, but the third intruder managed to make it past most of the guards and defeat those he couldn't evade. He's probably back in the village by now, and while he has no idea of Kisame's presence, which gives him the advantage, it means a rescue will likely be happening soon. Kisame is more than ready for a bit of action. The Tokujo were barely enough to get his blood flowing, and the thought of another fight with Kurama, one-on-one instead of with shifting odds in the Uzumaki's favor, makes Kisame gleeful. Maybe it won't be a fair fight. Nagato is an Uzumaki too, and even his chakra reserves were pitiful compared to what Kisame can muster. But Kurama is supposedly a Jinchuriki. It's probably the closest to an even match Kisame will ever find in his lifetime, and he's looking forward to it. "Seems like you've got a problem with losing track of people," Kisame chuckles. "Can't be good for business." Danzo gives him a dark look, but before he can say anything, another root member flickers into view in the doorway and signs something in a rush. There are Konoha-specific signs, so Kisame can't follow them, but Danzo's expression flattens out. He curls his hands around his cane and nods once.
The third intruder was just sighted slipping back into the tunnel system. The scouts are unsure if he's alone.
He's probably not. It's been a few hours since he escaped, and Kisame can't imagine he'd be stupid enough to return without backup. With a pleased hum, Kisame grips Samahara's hilt, ready to tug it free and let it start wicking up. There's been too much sitting around, and he's happily anticipating a chance to shake the lethargy from his bones. "Gonna lead him here for me?" Kisame asks cheerfully. Even if he is alone, more bait to draw Kurama here won't be a bad thing.
Why not?
Danzo says coolly and nods to one of the root members beside him. The shinobi snaps to attention, then flashes a hand seal and shifts into a perfect copy of the Sakatokujo, right down to the bound hands. He takes off into the tunnel, and the other two root shinobi give him a handful of seconds head start before going after him.
I'll be watching from a distance,
Danzo says half warning and half promise before he steps into the shadows along the wall and disappears. He's pretty confident that the Hokage isn't going to raise a fuss about his actions, Kisame thinks, amused, as he leans back against the opposite wall to wait. Either that or the Hokage is already aware, and Danzo doesn't think that pushing boundaries is going to get him in any lasting trouble. Which is objectively amusing, since it would mean that Danzo isn't a traitor technically, and that he's not betraying the Hokage. But it also raises the question of just when a Kage becomes a traitor to the rest of their village, and Kisame's never really considered that before. It's an interesting question. Something to ponder at another time, though. Right now, Kisame has a fight to prepare for, and it's a rematch he's very much looking forward to. Kakashi has something of a bad feeling about this. Watching blonde hair sway in front of him, he slips between shadows, attention carefully split between the passageways around them and Inuichi's sure steps. The root tunnels are at least familiar, even if he was only a member of the Foundation very briefly. Kakashi has a good memory, and those days are more vivid than he'd prefer, even if he did spend most of them caught up in grief. This is a two-pronged attack, more or less, and while Kakashi does wish they had more backup, he also understands why the clan heads as a group need to bring this to the Hokage. It's a show of unity and a threat all at once, a non-verbal promise that if Sarutobi tries to sidestep the situation, the clan heads will take matters into their own hands and perhaps end up needing a new Hokage. The measure hasn't been used anywhere but Kiri, and even then to dubious effect, but it's one of the reasons Hashirama never objected to the heavy focus on clan loyalty and the creation of the compounds within the village walls. It's a check to the Hokage's power, and this is precisely the kind of situation it's meant for. Of course, it leaves him and his partner in crime with the brunt of the work, but that was probably to be expected. They did volunteer. There's no one in the corridors, and the majority of the rooms they pass are dark and still. It's not overly comforting to calculate the Foundation's manpower right now in the heart of their territory as something like an enemy, but Kakashi's been a shinobi for too long to shut off his brain like that. It's a constant tally in the back of his head, rising and falling as they pass marks of occupation, sandal scuffs, and stray hair caught on rock. Traces of old fear and hurt. But no people, no guards or shinobi, and that's suspicious. Inuichi slows, then comes to a halt beside a sharp corner. There's no sound from beyond it, so Kakashi slips forward to crouch beside him, breathing carefully to filter out the scents. "This," Inuichi says darkly, "feels like a trap." Kakashi hums in lazy agreement, though it takes effort not to tense at even the low sound of his voice. "No one can account for everything," he points out, and even he doesn't know if it's a warning or a reassurance. Inuichi shoots him a narrow look, but turns back to face the empty hall ahead of them, assessing it. "Yeah, but it sure feels like we're the ones missing something here," he says gruffly, and then pushes back to his feet. "You should—" I shout from up ahead, panicked and desperate, a rush of footsteps that aren't even trying to be stealthy. Kakashi jerks back, sliding as much out of sight as he can in the shadows, but the runner never makes it to them. There's a cry as he goes down, two bodies following, and then a short scuffle followed by a yelp, and then silence. Two people murmur to each other, and then one of them grunts in effort before the footsteps recede. Inuichi narrows his eyes, but risks a glance around the corner. Kakashi does the same and feels his breath catch at the sight of Aoba limp over the shoulder of a root member with blood on the side of his face and his sunglasses cracked. "No!" he thinks, an instinctive and entirely emotional response. But Kakashi's been a shinobi too long for that to be his only response. He lifts his head and takes a breath, cataloging the scents in the corridor and pulling up a memory of the last time he and Aoba had a mission together. Aoba always smells faintly of dry blood, buried under feathers and ink and very faded herbs from the poisons he sometimes uses. An easy enough scent to mark and familiar, like the halls of T&I. There's no trace of it from any of those three shinobi. Catching Inuichi's eye, he rocks back on his heels and shakes his head sharply. No need for the Sharingan, enough of this. He is no doubt the one with Aoba's face is simply wearing a henge. which means that this is absolutely a trap. Inoichi pauses and Kakashi can see him weighing their options. If they take the bait and follow, there's no saying what they'll walk into, but there's also the fact that they'll have the advantage of knowing about the trap before it's sprung. Besides, if they're using Ioba's face, chances are good he's with them, and likely Genma too. Kakashi arches a brow somewhere between mild curiosity and a challenge, and gets a grin in return that's all teeth and threat. One hand flashes up, signing pursuit with only a touch of hesitation behind the motion, and Kakashi can't help but remember a forest clearing near the northern border, a stranger's face among the trees. He never could have known that mission would change his life quite so dramatically. But standing there, he can't truly bring himself to mind. I follow. He signs back, haphazard Anbu gestures meant for speed more than easy recognition, but blue eyes catch them without trouble. Inoichi smirks at him, then slips around the corner with soundless steps and hurries after the retreating root shinobi. Kakashi keeps to the shadows, keeps in step, and guards his back as they move. The room is tall and wide, with a small skylight high above and water pooled on the floor. One step in, braced for anything, and Inoichi turns sharply, hands coming up like claws. Kakashi, still hanging back, can see the way his eyes widened sharply, the shock and rage that spread across his features, and he snarls, "You!" There's a low, rumbling chuckle, a heavy step. "Me!" A voice agrees, not one Kakashi recognizes immediately, if it sounds distantly, vaguely familiar. He breathes deep, smells salt and metal, and the familiar flower herbal scent of one of Genma's nastier poisons spread liberally through the air. Not a good sign, if the blend Genma affectionately calls "Giant Killer" is that clear, but the man's still standing. A pause, and then another chuckle, even more amused than before. "That's a cute disguise," the shinobi says, inordinately cheerful. "But Samehada and I never forget the taste of such strong chakran, you know. Might as well drop it." "Damn," Kakashi thinks, and then several stronger curses right after. There's that advantage gone. He slips around the edge of the door just as Inoichi tilts his head up. His form wavers like a heat mirage, then fades away, and Kurama glares at Kisame venomously. "Shouldn't you be kissing your master's ass somewhere else?" he growls. Kisame laughs like it's a great joke, even as he sweeps Samehada down and out. "Before the first date?" he asks. "What kind of guy do you take me for? But I bet if I bring you back as a present, it'll cheer him up a bit. You don't mind, right?" Kurama bristles. "Over my dead body, you will, asshole!" Bloody red chakra flickers, then rises in a vicious tide, and Kurama lunges like a big cat, claws already slashing. With a wide, eager grin, Kisame meets him, and the whirl of chakra exploding from the pair of them is almost enough to make Kakashi stagger where he stands. He doesn't have time to linger and watch, though. Kisame might be more opposition than they were expecting, but they were expecting it. Kakashi isn't just here to play cheering section either. While Kurama and Kisame distract each other, he darts forward, giving them a wide berth as Kurama flips over Kisame's head and Samehada just skims his arm as he comes down. Two bound forms are neatly laid out on the other side of the cavern, sense reassuringly familiar, and a flicker of movement sends Kakashi diving out of the way, rolling and coming back to his feet with a kunai in one hand. The three root shinobi they followed here land in front of him, weapons drawn, and Kakashi doesn't bother trying to reason with them. He reaches for his hitayate, pushing it up, and lets the Sharingan bring everything into painful focus. Water slams into him from behind, knee-deep and as icy as the ocean in the dead of winter, and Kakashi staggers one step and then leaps, landing on the surface of it and using the momentum to throw himself forward. The first root member crashes into him, Tanto stabbing for his gut, but Kakashi slips around the blow, sweeps his feet out from under him, and dumps him into the water, where he disappears like it's far deeper than it looks. The woman in the center hops back, hands flashing through signs in a practiced blur, and the water ripples and rises like a dragon, mouth gaping as it grabs for Kakashi. There's no way to use a Reitan Jutsu not without possibly taking Kurama down with him, and Kakashi knows that even if Kurama can shake it off, he can't afford the distraction right now. He tries for Katon instead, a lash of fire leaving his fingertips to collide with the other jutsu. It sends steam billowing over them, thick and cloaking, and Kakashi summons a clone as he ducks to the side. One sharp blow to the back of the neck puts the second Kunoichi down, but the first spins, blade flashing, and darts under the clone's guard in a blur, stabbing for a kidney. The clone vanishes with a pop, but the woman doesn't even slow, twisting smoothly and catching Kakashi's kunai on her blade. The Blanks mask stares back at Kakashi, emotionless and immobile, and then she's gone with a twist and a lunge to the side. Where she was standing, a dark fin cuts through the water, and Kakashi curses and leaps for the ceiling. The summons skims his sandals, far too close for comfort, but he turns his leap into a flip and comes down on top of the Kunoichi, aiming to knock her out. He gets a flash of an exploding tag, a burst of chakra, and then she drops through the surface of the water. The force of the explosion slams Kakashi back into the cavern wall, winded and dazed and scorched. Impact! The clone pops. Kakashi drops from the ceiling to the spot where Genma and Naoba were, takes a breath, and dives headlong into the cold, dark water, searching for his friends. Master Harusame always discouraged him from interacting with the rest of Kiri, so Utakata can say with absolute certainty that he's never been around this many children before in his life.
Your eyes are really pretty,
A tiny blonde girl tells him, tugging insistently on his hand. Thank you, Utakata says, slightly bewildered. He doesn't want to hurt her by trying to pull away, so he lets her drag him towards an open spot on the hill behind the academy where another girl is waving and giggling.
The blonde girl beams. Come and make flower chains with me and Sakura-chan,
she orders.
Sheikah's being mean and won't do it because he's lazy.
The boy at whom this is apparently directed, sprawled on his back in the grass, makes a scuffing sound in the back of his throat, but doesn't otherwise move. A little desperately, Utakata casts a glance back over the group, trying to spot Naruto and Gaara, but they're still rolling around with Sasuke, luncheons abandoned. Iruka is caught in the middle of a squabble between a boy with a tiny puppy on his head and another boy in an eye-collared shirt that covers most of his face, so there's no help coming from that direction either. I've never made the flower chain, he says, as much of a protest as he can muster, even as the blonde drops into the grass beside her pink-haired friend.
Then you should learn,
she declares firmly and tugs on his fingers.
Come on, your hair is really pretty and shiny, and these asters will look so nice against it. They're violet, but they're not violets. Those are Ino's flower,
the other girl adds solemnly, though her smile is sweet.
I'll go with your yukata, too.
Utakata flushes faintly. He picked the blue yukata because Saiken assured him it was the best color on him, and this conversation is putting him uncomfortably in mind of that one, which was embarrassing enough. If you really think so. He surrenders because he's fairly certain there's no way to escape with any sort of dignity. He settles down carefully between the girls as the blonde cheers and asks them, Can I know who's going to be teaching me today?
I'm Yamanaka Ino,
the blonde says without hesitation.
My daddy owns the flower shop and he's teaching me all about flower meanings. Did you know asters mean patience and elegance and love?
I did not, but thank you for telling me. Utakata offers her a smile, then looks at her friend. And you're
Habano Sakura,
the girl waves cheerfully.
Ino-chan is my best friend.
You seem like very good friends, Utakata agrees, which apparently is the right thing to say. Because Ino and Sakura both glue themselves to his silent delight and start excitedly instructing him on how best to turn asters into jewelry. Utakata listens with half an ear, though he keeps a portion of his attention on Naruto, Gaara, and Sasuke. There have been no screams of terror from either of the other classrooms, so he assumes Karin, Yugito, and Fu are all surviving their first experiences with maths of Nanjin Cherokee children, and while he's still a little wary, he's fairly certain he can drop his guard at least a little here. The academy is right next to the administration building for a reason. The Hokage is close at hand if anything goes wrong or if there's any sort of attack, and there are squads of Anbu all around, armed to the teeth and on permanent alert. They're about as safe as it's possible to get without Han, Roshi, Kurama, or Yagura hovering over them. None of which accounts for why Saiken is fluttering nervously around the mental plane he shares with the other Riju, unable to settle and more than a little distracted. Saiken? Utakata asks carefully, even as he lets Ino guide him through twisting flower stems together. There's such a long pause that Utakata almost abandons the physical world to go and talk to the Rokubi in person because Saiken's always talked too much, not too little. Before he can, though, there's a feeling like a flurry of bubbles bursting, and Saiken says, No, stay up there, everything's fine. That's not exactly reassuring. Saiken is a lot of things, but good at lying isn't one of them. Utakata lets the Biju feel his flood of exasperated skepticism and gets a sheepish flicker of regret in response. Nothing's wrong, Saiken insists, though it's more resigned than a moment ago. I'm just trying to keep track of everyone. Yugi is napping, but everyone else is moving, and it's hard to keep up. That doesn't quite feel like the whole truth, but it's clear that Saiken doesn't want to say anything more, so Utakata doesn't push. You know I can help if something goes wrong, he offers, and before Saiken can protest again, adds, just in case. I'm listening, alright? Such a strange thing to say so easily, after years and years of shutting his ears and pushing Saiken away on Master Harasame's orders. But Utakata is happier now. Saiken is friendly and cheerful and kind, about as far from the hungry, malicious monster Harasame warned him of as is physically possible. Kurama's words, the younger Jinchurikis ease with themselves and their Biju. That was all the push Utakata needed to take a chance, and he's unspeakably glad he did. Thank you, Utakata, Saiken says warmly, though there's still a distracted edge to it. He doesn't offer anything more, turning his attention back to his siblings, and Utakata tries not to frown as he lets the Biju go. Here you go, Ino says, half an instant before something settles on Utakata's head. He blinks, reaching up to toss the nest crown of violet asters there, and then offers the waiting girls a smile. Thank you. It's beautifully made. You did a good job. It starts to slip, and Utakata carefully rights it and adds a touch of chakra to hold it in place. Sakura flushes happily, while Ino laughs and claps her hands. You're looking even prettier now, she says happily. Doesn't he, Eureka-sensei? Oh, gosh. Utakata glances up to find Uruka a few steps away, clearly trying not to grin, and smiles helplessly at him. Very, Iruka coughs, a red flush covering his cheeks and the bridge of his nose as he rubs at his scar. It's probably... Utakata! Utakata startles, practically scrambling to get to his feet even though he knows the voice was only in his head. Sakura and Ino squeak and duck away as he spins, looking for danger and... No! Far away! Saiken insists. It's Kurama! I can't feel him anymore! His breath tangles in his lungs, even as his heart stumbles over its next beat. No! He breathes. Saiken, no, you have to be wrong, but... The sensation slams into him, Kurama burning like a beacon in their shared mindscape, caught up in some kind of fight with lots of power everywhere, and then suddenly gone, leaving a gaping hole where he should be, and a ringing sort of emptiness behind. It can't be true. It can't be. Kurama isn't dead. There's no possible way Utakata can accept that. Where? He demands, already grabbing for his pipe and turning for the door, ready to run. Do the others know? There's a burble that feels like despair and desperation, cut through with an odd sort of frustration. They don't pay attention, they never have. The sage said family, but they don't try. Just for an instant, Utakata can feel several hundred years worth of loneliness. Saiken's regular checks to make sure that all of his siblings were still fine. The flicker of aggravation when the touch was never returned. The joy at long last when a tiny figure with firebrand hair and achingly familiar chakra stood in front of him several hundred times too small, but unmistakably Kurama, looking for him, wanting to see him. Best little brother in the world, Kurama had said, and he'll probably never know just how much those words mean to Saiken. The cautious touch of a hand on his shoulder makes Utakata jerk, and he turns quickly to find Iruka already pulling back, hands up to show he's harmless. Utakata? The Chunin asks worriedly. Is everything alright? It's not, and there's every chance that things will never be alright ever again. Utakata isn't about to say that though. I have to go, he offers instead, and it twinges to brush past Iruka, but he can't pause, can't look back. Kurama needs help, and Utakata will get it for him. Naruto? Gaara? When the boys glance up at him, he says firmly, find Karin, Yugito, and Fu as soon as class is done, and stay with them! Okay?
Okay,
Naruto says cheerfully.
Sasuke too?
Utakata manages a smile for them, even if it's the last thing in the world he feels like doing. Of course. I'll go directly home. Got it? Yes, Utakata. Gara agrees solemnly, wide eyes watching him carefully, but he doesn't ask anything. One more distracted smile, and Utakata is through the door back into the classroom, then picking up a run. He leaps out the window, landing lightly in the street, and demands, Seiken! Where? It's less of a clear direction, and more the brief but vivid memory of a distant beacon, slightly muffled but not impossible to locate. Somewhere to the north, Utakata thinks, and wastes no time heading for it. Can you tell Son Goku, Guki, and Kokubo? And Matatape and Chome, as long as they can convince Yugito and Fu to stay and protect the other children. And if Yagura is anywhere near Kushina, get Isubu to ask her to take care of the kids. Of course. There's a pause, and then Seiken adds, I'm sending them to the same place. Roshi and Han will meet you there. But Utakata's eyes catch a ripple in the air ahead of him, and he slides to a halt half a second before two figures in black cloaks appear out of thin air in front of him. The one with the white mask immediately disappears again, but Utakata stares into flat brown eyes framed by red hair and takes a breath he won't allow to shake. Somewhere nearby, an alarm bell starts ringing. Sosori of the Red Sun, Utakata says and raises his chin. Juntarke of the Rokubi, Sasori returns, cold and knife-edged, his eyes narrowing faintly. He can't be this close to the academy for no reason. Akatsuki is making their move, going after the most helpless of the Jinchuriki first, and if Kurama is already out of play, Utakata won't think dead. He won't. He can't. There's no way Kurama is anything other than fine. I hope you're not expecting to go any further, Utakata tells him, fingers tightening around his pipe and the bottle of solution, and is astonished that the words come out so even and steady. Disdain slides into Sasori's, laced through with boredom. Do you really think a child like you will be able to stop me? Does he? Utakata has spent his entire life accepting other people's demands, allowing them to use him and walk over him and set him aside whenever it's convenient. His father did it, Tobi Ezugura did it, Master Hatusame even did it, but the other Jinchuriki never have. He's one of them, and while it's not a bond he'd ever thought to want or need, now he can't imagine cutting himself off from it. Like Seiken, Kurama needing his help was a revelation, something that planted a warm seed down deep in his chest. He'd been the one Kurama could rely on, and that was something new and entirely foreign, but also amazing. Utakata has allowed himself to be a puppet for so long, but he isn't anymore. And there's no chance he'll allow himself to be beaten by an actual puppet. Yes, he says, and means it with everything in him. I will.